Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, it's the weird kid in the playground. It's me again, Spring. Okay, so today's episode is a very fine one, I should say. Have you ever thought about worms, specifically earthworms, specifically the nice worms? Not the ones in your body that kind of eat you from the inside, no, the nice worms. Well, if you haven't, let me tell you. They can be really cool creatures, right? They come in many types. They're just so adorable. They're very cute. And, they're good for the environment. If you ever take a shit in nature, it's always the worms that kind of like break it down. They're doing their job out there by helping the earth be better. And so worms, the scientific word for them is lumbricus. It's Latin. And it comes from the Latin term of lumbus, which means loin. So technically, under the scientific term, worms are referred to as dirt loins or loins of dirt. It's weird, but I'm not judging. Anyways, so today's episode is with a very special guest. We met, well, at least I kind of knew about him through ologies. He was one of the guests on that podcast, and I could never bring him down. And so, I've been following him on social media ever since. We became mutuals. I love the guy. I have so much respect for him. He's such a great man. He's a great father as well. So join me today in many conversations about planarians, possibly my new kind of favorite worms. You will find out about them shortly. About science culture in modern days, about God, biology, and nature, with Dr. Oné R Pagán. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, doctor? It's an honor to meet you, honestly.
Please call me. Please call me Oné. The title is for work.
How are you?
Everything is okay. We are about to enter final exams week, so it's gonna be crazy.
Yes, it's gonna be tough for the students, isn't it?
For the professor too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. How are
Tell
you?
me about you. Are you a student?
Yes, I'm currently my last year of school, grade 12, or in the UK, it's year 13, basically.
Excellent.
Yeah, I hope to enter university maybe in September.
Okay. And what do you want to study?
Not quite SU biology. I'm going into engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's you must be good at maths.
Not all the time. Not all the time. Yeah.
But thank you again for your kind invitation.
No, of course. Like when I discovered who you were, I couldn't help myself. I wanted to interview you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're very kind.
No, thank you. Honestly, I first discovered you through Ologies, the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. I discovered you, and then I was like, I need to bring this guy. I need to speak to him. There's no way I can just let this slide. So now, hopefully when I start my own podcast, you'll be one of the first people. It's an honor, honestly. It's an honor.
The honor is mine, and thank you again for being so kind.
Thank you. So if you just want to introduce yourself to maybe to the future people.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, my name is Oné Pagán. I am a professor of biology at Westchester University in Pennsylvania, and I'm Puerto Rican. I don't know if you know where Puerto Rico is. It's a small island in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
But I've been in the mainland for about 20 years now, and I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a pharmacologist by training. I have advanced degrees in biochemistry and pharmacology, and an undergraduate degree in general sciences.
So what's pharmacology?
Well, pharmacology is essentially the study of drugs, which can be combined with toxicology because no drug is absolutely safe.
That's true.
And even sometimes small amounts of a drug, if you are allergic, that can prove fatal.
That's true. So start basically. One thing I noticed about you is you always say how much of a bookworm you were, basically. That you love reading. A bookworm. You love reading. You love books. Yeah. So what genre would you say got you into reading? What book did you read and say, yes, I love reading now?
Well, I can't actually say because I've been an avid reader since I was a little kid, a little child. I've always reading. I have always read. I mean, that's what I try to say,
Mm.
and I enjoy it so much, and it stayed with me. So I really can't say exactly a particular book or a particular. I credit my mother and my grandmother for my love for reading.
That's very nice. Yeah. To be honest, I'm the same as well. I credit my father to get me into reading and to love sciences basically and mathematics. So right now, about education in the UK, there's a new incentive to introduce the youth to STEM science subjects such as
Uh-huh.
biology, physics. What do you think? Because what they want is to encourage the youth to get into more science subjects. They want more of the new generations to be part of the STEM people, to be scientists, researchers, educators. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think that both aspects are extremely important because there's a couple of things. Even if you don't want to study sciences at university, we live in a technological society. So it's now more important than ever to understand science and how it works. Okay? On the other hand, if we want to get good scientists, we need good educators. And I mean, in my personal job, I do both. I actually teach a lot of students every year, and not only in pharmacology because I teach pharmacology for advanced students, but I also teach biological sciences for non-majors. So I get majors from all over the university, like I don't know, like pedagogy majors, engineering majors. I get uh, anything, literature, and I try to impress upon them the importance of science. Not everybody has to be a scientist, but everybody needs to understand at least some of it.
Yeah, I quite agree as well. So as many not may know, you study a specific type of animal, um,
Yes.
planarians. And so, how did you come to discover these animals, basically?
Well, that was an interesting story because I never took a zoology course in my life. I knew about planarians and I knew that they were flatworms and I knew that they regenerated. But my thing was more in the chemical sciences, biochemistry, pharmacology, things like that. So, I forgot to say that I was also a non-traditional student. After university, I worked for a bunch of years, and I went back for my PhD when I was 35. Okay, so and and that's something that many people can do if they wish to. The thing about it is that when I went to for my PhD, I did my PhD at Cornell University in New York. I was testing several drug targets at the biophysical level. Okay, I was testing cell lines, I was testing receptors, transporters, and whatnot. And then I saw this paper about how can planarians can get addicted to abuse drugs like cocaine and nicotine, things like that. So I went to my advisor and I said, "We really need to test planarians. This is a really good project." And he said, "No." He said that when you have your own lab, when you get to be a scientist, you can do it, and that's precisely what I did.
So you went to him and
when
you were like, "Let's put some cocaine on these flatworms. Let's see how they react."
Exactly, and that's essentially what I did, and based on that, I have built a research career in my institution as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and so to anyone that might not know what planarians are, what exactly are they? Are they worms? Are they flatworms? Where do they live?
Yeah, they are worms. There's three main types. There are marine planarians, terrestrial planarians, and freshwater planarians. And I study the freshwater type, and they are small worms. The ones that I study are, I don't know, maybe a centimeter long, maybe a little bit more than that. But they have a remarkable property, which is the capacity for regeneration, meaning that you can cut their heads off and they will regrow a new head, including a fully functional brain. Can you imagine if we learn how to do that? Because for people with brain damage because of a car accident, spinal cord injury. So You know that the brain, it's notoriously difficult to heal when it gets in an accident or stroke or anything like that. So planarians are remarkable because it's one of the few organisms capable of brain regeneration. And we take that into advantage to study the pharmacology of certain drugs, and eventually we're getting into the pharmacology of regeneration.
So a lot of scientists first took to lizards for regeneration um, to see if they can be applicable to humans. Do you think planarians would be able, one day you can use the same biology to apply to humans, maybe regrow limbs, heads, and all kinds of body parts?
Well, many scientists think so. I have many colleagues who are actually engaged in trying to translate invertebrate research into humans. And there's a lot of logic in that statement because there's a lot of biochemical developmental pathways that are common through our common evolutionary history with quote unquote lower animals, including planarians. And most of the neurotransmitter systems that we have are present in planarians. The same drugs that can get us addicted or that can affect us can affect planarians. So I think it's a very translatable model, and people are actually quite engaged into research to try to apply this type of knowledge into humans. We cannot regrow a human limb yet, but that's coming.
So then maybe in about 50 years, 100 years, you can just walk to your local pharmacy and say, I want a new hand. Then they can just give you a new hand.
I don't know about a new head, but maybe a new hand or a new back, or yeah.
uh, yeah, that'd be awesome. Imagine having 4 arms. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, if you know how
Mm.
to manage them properly and you associate your brain structure to manage four instead of two, that would be awesome.
And about planarians, so since there is 3 types, you could say they even had a common ancestor in the past, and they all
Most
evolved.
likely,
Yeah,
most likely, because
I,
one difficulty about planarians is that there's not a lot of fossil records because they are invertebrates and they die in a very dramatic way. They dissolve, like in a monster movie,
mm.
and there's again I am unaware of any type of fossil remains of planarians.
And would you say that they are related to earthworms?
Distantly, yes, yeah. No, they're only worms because they are again uh, uh, like a cylinder without legs. I mean, but that's the only similarity they have. They are distantly related, but they don't belong in the same family.
Fair enough. And what role do like planarians have in the ecosystem in around animals and in nature?
Well, the land planarians are actually considered an invasive species, and they are actually hunters. The land planarians actually eat earthworms, which is a problem for agriculture. So that's one main thing. So in the ecosystem, for example, marine planarians are some of the most beautiful organisms in the sea. They are very colorful. They're called polyclads, more strictly speaking, and they are hunters in the ecosystem. So are the freshwater planarians. Okay, so they, even though they're small animals, they're hunters, cannibals. Even.
What do they eat? What do they feast on?
Any type of other animal that they can get their mouths on,
And what about
including other planarians.
and what about their digestive system? Is it the same? How does it work?
It's very simple. It's very simple. Planarians don't have bodily organs per se. They have cavities in their bodies. For example, they don't have lungs, and they absorb oxygen from directly from the atmosphere. Their digestive system is actually when they ingest food through their mouths, which is actually located in the middle of the body. They extend a tube and they latch onto the prey, and then they suck it dry. Okay, so
Wow.
and that they transfer that those nutrients into the interior cavity, and then it's digested and distributed throughout the whole body. But they don't have like a stomach or instead intestines, nothing like that.
How do they excrete them? Do they have spores in the skin?
Well, that's one way, and also their mouth it doubles up as an anus. It's only one aperture. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, sounds like something out of a horror movie.
They are.
So many people say because of their ability to regenerate, many people consider them immortal.
Actually, yes. There's a very interesting point related to that because, in theory, if you keep cutting up planarians, the planaria each fragment will regenerate a new worm. Also, most planarians they don't seem to age. They don't display the same biochemical markers of senescence as many other organisms do. So, for all intents and purposes, if left to itself, it doesn't eat them or kills them, they are effectively immortal. They can be killed very easily. You can squish them, you can give chemicals to them, but if left alone, nobody exactly knows how long do they live.
And you said they can just regenerate into a new planarian, basically.
Yes.
Does that make them asexual creatures?
Actually, they are because there's very few organisms capable of doing that. So that essentially it is as if you would cut like I don't know, a fingernail or a finger, and a second person, like just like you, a clone, will grow. I mean, no other animal, very few other animals are able to do that.
They have no mating culture, nothing like that.
Culture.
Mating culture.
Oh, yeah, no, they can reproduce sexually and asexually. They are
Oh.
hermaphrodites. Each
Mm.
individual has the two sexes, but they don't have any uh, mating behaviors that we can speak of.
Oh wow. I mean, they are pretty interesting.
They
Um,
are.
yeah, basically, and when they're presented with drugs, like, as you were saying before, cocaine and methamphetamine, do they behave similar to humans? If
Yeah.
you were to give them marijuana, would they be very chilled out? Would they want
Well,
pizza?
it's very it's very similar. For example, if we put nicotine, let's say nicotine, in the water of the planarians, and we leave it there, and then we take it away, they will crave it. They begin shaking. They begin swimming like crazy. They can latch on the bottom of the container, and they go like a cobra, like looking for something. Okay, and we can actually quantify those responses. They can also respond to acute exposure, like they go into seizure-like behaviors, like they twitch, and you can actually quantify all of those movements. And eventually, they will recover. But many scientists are using that as a model for abuse drugs that can be hopefully extended to humans too.
And how do they see that? Is it like stimulus, physical stimulus, light stimulus?
Yeah, they have ocelli. They
Mm.
have they're actually eye cups. They don't have a lens or anything like that. They have like a cup and an aperture in their bodies with photosensitive pigments at the bottom. They cannot form an image, but they can distinguish between light and dark. Okay? In fact, they actually flee away from light because if you're a small animal, you are not venomous, you are not fast, you are not, I don't know, you don't have any, you cannot fly. What do? You hide. So, and they actually, that's technically called negative phototaxis. So they flee away from the light.
Oh wow. I just thought maybe they like bats, echolocation. I don't think it would be that complex.
No, no, they're actually deceptively complex, yes.
Mm. And in this age of technology, many scientists want to build robots, basically. Robots that are very high intelligence, robots that could maybe one day fit into our society. And many robotic scientists look at biomimicry, what is basically when robots mimic natural life. And so, do you think maybe robots will one day be able to mimic planarians and be able to regenerate their own mechanical limbs?
Well, this is a very sheer speculation on my part. Okay,
Mm.
so I think that eventually with nanotechnology, we could at least simulate regeneration in a robot eventually. But I don't know enough engineering to give you an intelligent response in that. But it's my personal belief that it will happen eventually.
Yeah, I think so too. And what is your basically opinion on robots becoming more intelligent every day? And is there any chance maybe they can even take over? What are your thoughts on this stuff?
Oh, that I don't. Well, certainly I wouldn't want them to take over because by definition they would be smarter and stronger than us, and
Mm,
that's never good for the weaker species. Okay, that's never good.
mm.
I would love to establish a good cooperation between our two kinds of intelligences. I'm not very optimistic about that. Just look at what we do to members of our own species. And
Mm.
and that's something. Well, look at the world.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a sad commentary, but it's sadly true.
And many people who have the same idea think that maybe we should stop our progress on artificial intelligence and just leave it where it is.
I don't. We can actually say we should stop, but a motivated scientist will always find a way to make things happen.
That's true.
Okay, I think it's gonna happen whether we like it or not.
That's
It
true.
Yeah, it's only a matter of how well we educate people to do things ethically.
Mm. Ethics will have a new meaning when the age of robots come over. We'll have technological ethics and a new kind of morality as well. You know,
Possibly.
do we see robots as humans? Do we see them as other species? Are they sentient, conscious? It'll be a very complex age.
Oh yeah,
Like I said.
I don't envy your generation who's gonna deal with all these type of things, because for example, consciousness is a very loaded term. We don't even know what consciousness is. I don't even know if I am conscious. Okay, so it depends on how we define it, and then we will apply or not that definition to an entity that it's literally the other. Okay, so something like
Basically, yeah.
different from us. Yeah.
And if we figure out consciousness, you think maybe animals and humans would have different kinds of consciousness?
I would side with Darwin in that regard. Darwin said, I'm paraphrasing it, that the difference in the mind between animals and humans is a matter of degree,
Not
not
kind.
kind.
The green, yeah,
And that's I truly believe that. For hundreds of years, people said like I don't know, dogs are not conscious or cats. Nobody has ever had a pet can ascribe to that.
that's true.
They have feelings, they have intelligence, they have moods. Okay, so they are conscious. Is their consciousness the same as ours? I don't know. They certainly see the world differently. We are primarily visual animals. Dogs are primarily olfactory animals. You mentioned bats, echolocation. We don't know how it's it like to be in their world.
That's
But
true.
consciousness, yes, I think they do have consciousness.
And being a scientist, would you consider yourself to be more a theoretical scientist or a practical man?
Both, because I love doing experiments and I love thinking about them. So, and let's put it this way: I love shameless speculation.
Mm.
Okay, and I speculate in my experiments, and then on the results of my experiments, my hypotheses and whatnot, and then I pride myself on designing the proper experiment to answer shameless speculation,
Mm.
whether it supports or not my hypothesis. So both phenomena, but not phenomena, both approaches are essential for science.
Obviously, yes. I say this because in the new generation of scientists, there seems to be a clear divide of people who prefer one thing over the other, and so it creates a biasness in in the fields as well.
Absolutely, no. And there's people who are very good at theory. There's people who are very good experimentalists. There's people who are both.
Mm.
And we need all kinds.
Yeah, and in terms of scientists, who would you say inspired you to want to be one, basically?
That's another difficult question for me because ever since I was little, there was never any doubt that I will end up doing something sciencey. I don't remember this story, but my mother tells me that when I was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old, I asked her if God created microscopes.
Mm.
Okay, what kid asked that question? Okay, that was me. And my mother gave me a very good answer. She said, well, uh, no, God did not create microscopes, but He gave people their intelligence to invent things. And I think that was a very good answer for a 4-year-old kid.
Wow.
You know.
I kind of have a similar story as well. See, because I used to think God made adults like just like this. So God made
Uh-huh.
my dad 40 years old. God made my mom 30 years old. They didn't grow up as children. And so when I asked my dad, were you just born 40 years old? Then me being 6 years old, unaware of the world. And he says, oh no, God made you as a baby. And because of the biology in your body, the cells multiply and stuff like mitosis happens, and then you become a human being. Obviously, when you go to school, you learn about this stuff, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Oh man, that's a beautiful story too. So, what can I tell you? You're my kind of person. We are like-minded people.
Thank you. Yeah, and so you say you after university you worked for 20 years before doing your PhD. What made you want to do a PhD?
Well, I always wanted to do it, but I needed to work. I needed to work. I was married. I had 2 kids at the time, but then an opportunity came along, and I got a scholarship, and they recruited me. And I said, well, I took the opportunity because I mean that's what I wanted to do.
So
And
yeah,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, sorry, then it's fine. Go ahead.
No, no. And then once I had the means to move my family from my island to the U.S. Actually, Puerto Rico is part of the U.S., but that's another story. And I took the opportunity, and I never regretted it. No.
I saw how much cocaine you fed the planarians, and I said,
Oh,
please study with us.
tiny amounts.
So many people don't know this, but you're also an author of science books.
Yes.
Yeah, I currently had the pleasure of studying to read Strange Survivors.
Oh, thank you. How do you
Yeah,
like it?
I loved it, to be honest. I'm currently in chapter 3. Uh, amazing stuff, amazing stuff. And there's just like a bunch of stuff I wanted to ask you about it because I just, I couldn't contain myself.
Absolutely.
So you say, I think, in the introduction about the fundamental force and why do you call it the survival instinct? Why do you think that the force that drives us to live is also a survival instinct?
Well, because any type of organism, if they don't have this type of feeling to avoid danger, eat something, okay, and reproduce somehow, that species will not last for long. Okay, so if let's put it this way: if our ancestors, okay, 50,000 years ago, they saw a saber-toothed tiger and they were, oh, okay, hi, kitty, kitty. Those were not our ancestors. Okay, they left no descendants. All right, but the people who actually ran the other way and eventually organized to defend themselves against the predator, those were the ones that survived. And from humans all the way throughout nature, life, its its main mission is to survive in order to reproduce to the next generation. And some people say it's a matter of genes, for example. Some people they say that the unit of selection is the organism. Some people say that the unit of selection is the population. But at any rate, regardless of how you define it, it's about survival.
Yes, and so basically for humans, I would also argue, wouldn't you say this survival instinct could also be categorized as faith, maybe in a god, maybe you're in a belief system, maybe hope as well?
Yeah, maybe many people characterize it as that. By the way, I'm not this kind of scientist who rejects faith,
Mm.
or I mean, if I would be pressed to characterize myself, I would tell you that I'm a very hopeful agnostic. Okay, so I just don't know. I would love it to wake up one day and I always I had a very good colleague. He passed, and we always said that if and when we get up there, we will annoy God so much with questions because we would ask him so many things. For example, it's a silly thing, but when I was little, I always thought, well, when I get to heaven, I want to ask God for a picture book of all the animals that have ever existed. So now that I'm older, my daydream about that is that, well, a God like that wouldn't need to give me a picture book. He could show me each and every organism. And now I think not only on Earth, but elsewhere in the universe that have ever existed. Things that I never even thought about thinking. Okay, so hope certainly is a mechanism for survival. Some people argue that our religion is a reflection of our desire to survive. And they are very complex ideas. I can't say that I agree that it's just an idea, because again, I don't know. It would be irresponsible for me to tell you, no, I know there's no God, or I know there's a God, because nobody really knows.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I'm the same as well. I don't reject the idea of God. I don't reject the idea of a religion, because I just think life, there's so much symmetry in life. There's no way it was just done by probability. Even you look at math, the golden ratio as well is present in all around the world. It's in biology, it's in trees, animals, everywhere. And there's just no way probability by itself or chance was able to make such a beautiful symmetry in the universe from macro to micro.
That's the argument of quite a few scientists.
Yeah, and so basically in the book as well, you mention how nature gives amazing plot twists as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and so basically a lot of people argue, especially Stephen Hawking, about how the creation of DNA was basically a pure chance, a mutation in our blood, and the idea of intelligent life was just a chance.
I don't know about that, because that's, Stephen Hawking was probably the smartest person alive for a long time, but respectfully, he misinterpreted evolutionary theory, because evolutionary theory does not even pretend to explain the origin of life, and evolutionary theory is neither about random chance. Okay, so for example, the Darwinian paradigm. Random mutation followed by natural selection. All right? Random mutations, there's no question about it. It's random. But selection is anything but random. Okay? Now, many biologists also agree that there's more to life than natural selection. Natural selection is still a player, but it's not the only player. There's many other mechanisms that can actually come into play when we deal with evolution.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, natural selection might be there, but there's also external factors that could play at hand as well. And also Stephen Hawking said something similar to what you did. He said when he gets to heaven, he will annoy God with all kind of math questions. He's like, oh, why did you make math so complicated for the universe? Why couldn't it just be like a simple 2 + 2 = 4? That's the which I just find quite interesting, that all scientists share this hope of that there might be a God out there, and why did he make the universe such a complex thing to study?
Why well, it may be complex from our perspective. And there's also the idea that some people think that math is invented rather than created, than fundamental. So, and that's interesting. That's super interesting to me. I don't have the brain power to tackle those questions.
No, I think the existence of the golden ratio just proves math is discovered. Because if it was created, then we would find no way to apply it to the real world in the way we have done.
Yeah, you make a good point.
Yeah, and then so one other thing as well, you mentioned about Darwin's quote on animals. The difference in intelligence is degree, or kind. Do you think Darwin believed that animals are conscious?
I think so. He lived in an era that he had to be even more careful than nowadays to say things like this.
It's a more restricted time.
Yes, exactly. So, but based on what I read, based on what he said, I fully believe that he was I fully believe that he believed that organisms are conscious. Yes.
Yeah, I think so as well, because like you said before as well, the way animals react to certain things, we can't help but think that could be conscious because if they experience feelings like us, they have emotions like us, they have a very clear thought process. If you look at birds, they are problem solvers. Ravens and parrots, you give them a lock, they can pick it. And I would think if they exhibit these same traits as us humans, then they must be conscious then. Yeah, and then
I agree.
and then this maybe even makes me think about they have their own languages, which a lot of animals do as well. You know, they have mating calls, they have danger calls, and if animals, you know, they have their own philosophy of life as well. Maybe they're not that smart yet, but you mentioned how you always think of a chimpanzee looking at the sunset and thinking if the chimpanzee is thinking, what is that like circle thing in front of me? And I always think maybe in 100 years, 200 years, when chimpanzees evolve, they could even develop a thought process where they start thinking, oh, you know, what is a tree? What am I? What is the sun? What is the moon? And who knows, maybe even in 500 years, if we even still around by then, if, you know, climate change didn't take us, maybe even chimpanzees, apes would have ancient civilizations. They would worship the sun like us, and maybe we could even provide them guidance.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Actually, thank you for mentioning. That's actually my favorite paragraph in the book.
Yeah. No, because I was reading it and I'm like, you know, that's a very interesting point to bring up. You know, because you look at a dog looking at a food and you're thinking, oh, is he trying to savor it? Is he trying to think of how good it will taste? You know, you just think of the animals and you think, oh wow, are they aware that they have these abilities within them? You have cheetahs which have black marks on their skin to absorb sunlight, so they will have clear vision. Do they know this? Do they know that they're using this for advantage? It's so bizarre to me, and it's so cool to see these animals being to apply these abilities. So, for example, according to the laws of aerodynamics, a bumblebee cannot fly. Like the proportions of the
nature does not care about how we decide to describe
so,
it.
yeah, they say so to us humans who try to tackle this with math. That's how we try to explain the universe. A bumblebee cannot exist; it cannot fly. But right and behold, before our eyes, a bumblebee is flying, and it doesn't care. It doesn't know any math. It just has the will to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, and this leads me on to this thought as well: is that if we have the will to do something, the incentive, maybe even math does not have to be an equation, a factor. Math does not have to be part of to be a factor for us to do something. You see people, adrenaline, for example, when you're in a fight, people exhibit more strength than they usually would able to exert. Maybe due to adrenaline, maybe due to the will. You never know.
You never know. I mean, there's a lot of anecdotes in that regard too, and I'm comfortable thinking that we don't know everything about nature yet.
That's true. I agree so as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because you know when someone tells you you only learn about 2% of animals in the universe, or like on Earth, you start to think, you know, how much more stuff do we not know? You look at deep sea fish, and they are stuff from like the horror books. You know, they stuff from like your imagination, things no one would ever think of existing, and you would just think, how much more is there that we do not know about? You know,
absolutely. One of my favorite examples is squid. Because for hundreds of years, people said, well, there's giant squid, and nobody believed them until they caught one. And now there's something bigger, the colossal squid. Okay, so, and I agree with you. There's, who knows what's out there.
It's the same with dinosaurs as well. If I was to tell you huge meat-eating creatures existed millions of years ago that looked like nothing like today's animals, you would not believe me until I showed you proof. Until they found the bones of dinosaurs, and then we realized, oh, you know, this earth does not only belong to us, it belongs to much more bizarre creatures. Yeah. So I was saying, dinosaurs, to think that I would tell you dinosaurs existed a long time ago without any proof, it would be something crazy. No one would believe me. A long time ago, I would have even been hung for saying something so bizarre. It's just so bizarre. It's just crazy to me how these creatures even existed.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, science deals with evidence, after all.
Yes, well, and the best revelation was, you know, when you find these dinosaurs, we thought they were reptilians, then they became, we found out that they had feathers and they were birds. which even makes you think that how was a chicken a T-Rex millions of years ago? How did this creature becomes a chicken that I can eat basically? I can fry it, I can eat it. It's so bizarre to me.
It's just evolution. That goes to show that evolution is not directional in a way that it's aiming for the biggest or the baddest. It's just about survival.
And you also refer to nature as an author in your book as well, many times. And Stephen Hawking as well points something out. He says that there's a chance we all share a gene pool with all the creatures. Because if you look at bananas, for example, we share 80% of our DNA with bananas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we share DNA with a lot of animals as well. And so, would you think that Mother Nature could have a conscious as well? Maybe I didn't, not an intentional conscious, but more so, it just sort of happened as a result of
Yeah,
evolution.
that's an idea that has been floated by a variety of people, but I honestly don't know enough one way or another. Certainly, if there's something related to consciousness, like a nature consciousness, it will be very different from what we think as consciousness.
Mm.
It's certainly not going to be nerve brain based.
Yeah, I think so too. I think before we understand nature as a whole, we need to first figure out what consciousness is and how our brains fully work. Because right now, we know close to nothing about our brains. Even human biology itself is still a mystery to many, many scientists. Um, a lot of people also trying to tackle how to achieve immortality, to stop us from aging. And you think can even use planarians to even stop aging as well, since they also tend to be immortal.
Well, some people think so because they're studying the genes that endow planarians with these type of capacities. But we have to take into consideration that planarians are much simpler organisms in terms of, for example, bodily organs and whatnot. They are much simpler. So
Mm.
we don't know if we can apply the same principles to achieve. Well, uh, I wouldn't say immortality because nobody is will be able to be immortal in the grand scale of things. The universe has an expiration date by itself.
Mm.
And entropy will always catch up. I would say a long time, but not immortal. No.
Yeah, and you think maybe sometime in the future, I don't know how crazy this sounds, but maybe you can even apply gills to human bodies, so make human bodies able to adapt to different environments instead of relying on scuba gear or oxygen tanks.
I don't see why not. Some people think about that. I'm also a science fiction fan, and I've read
Mm.
so many stories in that regard. Yeah, I mean, as I said, for good or bad, any sufficiently determined scientist will make things happen.
Yeah, and speaking about immortality, planarians are not the only creatures in nature shown to be immortal, or at least that live for very, very long times. For example, you have sharks. Sharks as well. They're
Yeah,
immune to every disease known to man right now. I think the oldest shark existed when Shakespeare was still a kid.
yeah,
Yeah, it's about 500 years old. It's so crazy.
yeah.
And I was thinking we can even harness the power. Like if you look at the biology of sharks as well, we can see what makes them so immune to all these diseases. And if we
Well,
can,
that's actually a kind of a misconception because sharks can get cancer and they can get many diseases.
mm,
It's just that what I have read is that we rarely find a shark with a tumor because it will die and go to the bottom of the ocean where it's consumed by everything else. You
and
know,
what do you think? What was I gonna say? So basically, do you think it's antibodies that make them immune? Maybe,
I,
or maybe it's just
I,
a very
I wouldn't know. I really don't know.
yeah. Because what I was thinking is, you know how venom we use venom to create antidotes as well.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we can even use similar things because the blood of fish is very different than the blood of humans. They have a different chemical system. They have a different nervous system and everything. And I think we could even use that to maybe create something adaptable to humans.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's
I'm
kind
just
of
saying. Yeah.
no. That's not that far fetched. I mean, that's the idea of using animal models for research. So,
Mm,
because we use animals that display a characteristic that it's predominant in them that we don't have. Okay, for example, in nervous system research, people actually use squid, the squid giant axon, because they are like a millimeter thick. That for a nerve cell, that's huge, and that allowed scientists to put electrodes on them and whatnot. And again, we need to take advantage of the specific characteristics of animals and plant models.
I would also argue the same thing for lobsters. A lot of people realize that lobsters have, I think, very, very accurate nervous systems as compared to humans. And so many scientists, what they tend to do is they test drugs such as dopamine and other stuff as well on lobsters before applying it to humans. And what you would realize as well is the society of lobsters and their community is very much similar to ours. They have their own hierarchies, and what's different is the level of dopamine in a lobster determines how high it is in the social hierarchy between lobsters.
I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
And basically, let's say you have a lobster stronger than another lobster, but they fight. But the stronger lobster has lower levels of dopamine, it would lose because it wouldn't have enough confidence levels to fight.
Okay.
And yeah, which kind of I just find it interesting how you can use drugs to manipulate creatures to do things as well.
I had no idea that that was a thing. Thank you for sharing that. That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, you're welcome. And I think how marijuana as well is used sometimes to treat Parkinson's in humans.
Yeah, so there's a variety of drugs that are experimental in that regard. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I just think as a whole, being chemical-based life forms, we share a lot of similarities, and there's no reason why we could learn from animals and apply some of their capabilities to humans. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I just think it's quite amazing. And so, do you think maybe other planets as well, they might develop their own kind of chemical-based life forms? Maybe not the same as ours, but even still chemical-based.
It is a virtual certainty. If we just look at the numbers,
Mm,
the sheer numbers of stars out there, each one with at least a planet. I mean, it is a virtual certainty that there's life out there. What type of life? Nobody knows, and nobody can claim to know.
mm,
Some people think that there's this phenomenon, evolutionary phenomenon like convergent evolution, that essentially would say they apply it a little extreme, in my opinion, that life out there will actually resemble humans. Okay, that may or may not be true, but I reserve my judgment on if and when until we find it.
I mean, if I was to argue their point, because in biblical scripture, even in the Quran for Islam, a lot what's mentioned time and time again, even in the Torah as well, is that God made humans in His best image, which would suggest that the primal view of a maybe a dominant life form is a humanoid creature, which may be why if you were to meet aliens, there's a high chance they would also have a humanoid body.
Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a scholar of religion, but we have to take into consideration that we are an evolved species too.
Mm,
We share a common ancestor with chimpanzees, for example. Okay, we're primates, and
mm.
and that's something that I don't know. I just don't know. I wish I
Nah,
knew.
yeah, me too. But what I find really interesting sometimes makes me curious as well is if there were to be other chemical-based life forms, do you think they would develop the same mentality as humans? Like you mentioned before, you say, "Oh, look at the state of the world. It wouldn't be great for us to be in league with other robots or other creatures." And do you think maybe even other life forms may not be so peaceful towards each other? Maybe they react to each other the same way we did as well.
Yeah, I would say that if there's life out there, intelligent life at that, if intelligence is an essential factor for survival, which that's not clear in our planet,
Hmm.
that human intelligence is essential for survival, that they're going to make the same mistakes and they're going to get the same triumphs that we do. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
true. That's true.
yeah, so that's what I think. I wish it were different, but mistakes are going to be made by everyone and everything.
Yeah, I agree as well. And to sort of And to sort of expand the imagination, also there's a possibility of humans living on Mars within the next 100 years as well.
Some people would like to think so. It's gonna be a tall order. I'm not gonna say that it's not possible because it's gonna be possible. It's gonna happen. But a lot of things had to be put in place for survival. Mars is a very inhabitable place right now. Okay, so atmosphere is different, gravitation is different, the composition of the atmosphere. You know, it will take a lot of work to make Mars habitable.
Yeah, so some people like Elon Musk, what they suggest is to nuke it, to use the nukes we have on Earth to kind of create a warmer atmosphere, to create an ozone layer around Mars to make it more habitable.
Yeah, but we don't know enough. Well, I mean, I suppose that's possible, but we don't know enough geology to see how long it's gonna last.
That's
Because
true.
Mars had an atmosphere not so long ago.
That's true. They found
Okay,
water,
well,
didn't they? Yeah.
exactly, a liquid water, and it's not there anymore. So is it because of the solar wind? Because Mars doesn't have an appreciable magnetic field? We don't know exactly. We don't know enough of how to terraform a planet.
Now, Mars is also a place with a lot of mountains and there's also a lot of volcanoes. Would you say maybe the, because there's a lot of volcanoes, it would suggest there was kind of a cataclysmic event, a catastrophic event that
That,
ended?
that I don't know. I don't think that Martian volcanoes have been geologically active as far as we know, in the
Hmm.
last millions of years or so. So I wouldn't know.
I mean, it is something interesting to ponder upon every
It
time.
is interesting,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, honestly.
Absolutely. No, no, it was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. And I will be more than happy to talk to you again.
Of
And
course, I would. Yeah, that'd be amazing.
yes, and best of luck in your studies.
Thank you. Thank you
And
very much. Thank you.
again, thank you for giving me such a treat. I love talking to like-minded people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Honestly, as well, I find it's an honor to me to meet people like you. It's not every day you get to meet a doctor, and to speak to them as well in their own field and just about general stuff as well. Yeah.
But it's my pleasure.
Yeah,
You'll get there.
thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you. Maybe one day.
Uh, absolutely. So have a great weekend. Thank you for
You
meeting with
too.
me.
Yeah.
And I will send you a couple of emails with some information in a moment.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. But take care.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye. So that was the episode. Yeah, that was the first episode. One of my favorite guests so far of all time. He's such a great man. He's such an inspiration. He serves as a role model sometimes. Really great person. I recommend you check out his books. Honestly, they are to die for. They're amazing. If you're a bookworm, or if you just like science books in general, or just a science nerd, I recommend you check out his books. They are very interesting. The way he writes as well. Love it. Love everything. But yes, clearly, I really enjoyed the conversation I had with him in the episode. Um, at the time, I didn't really meet a lot of people with the same mind as mine, and it was really, really fun to meet someone with the same scientific ideology in the modern sense. I would say we spoke about different topics, and we spoke about modern topics as well and science, and it was very, very fun. Again, yeah, do check him out. He's such a great man. He's a great father. He's a great professor. His students are lucky to have him. But yes, do give me as well some tips and feedback. How did you guys find it? The next episodes are gonna be much longer than this. Even though this was a bit concise, I still enjoyed it. The episodes to come are gonna be at least 1 hour long. This one, I think it's about 53 minutes, I believe, is gonna be longer with this outro anyway. So yeah, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Much more to come. Thank you, and bye bye.